Welcome, heathens and witches, to the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. Yeah, we're back at it again, a little late again this week. Listen, we're always going to be a little late.
Or maybe this is the new normal.
For a while, so just be okay with that.
Yeah.
Anywho, at least it's out this week because, I'm pretty tired. I would have preferred not to have to do something. I could take a nap. But, so we're coming at you with a whole size video.
A whole size video.
A whole sized video, yeah. One whole
or
unit
audio.
Of, one whole
depending
unit
on how you're consuming
of sound.
this.
And speaking of units of sound, if you're listening to this on your podcast network of choice, leave us a review because metrics are a lie and the Matrix is controlling all of our minds. If you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, comment below, share, subscribe. Again, the Matrix, it gets us if we don't do those things. And I guess we're going to get right into it. We are talking about Freyja.
That's right.
Freyja.
No.
There's a silent J in there.
I mean, yeah, there is kind of like a silent J in there. Yeah.
Freyja.
Sure.
Freyja.
No.
Right? You pronounce
I feel
the
like
J's
you're about
like
to get
H's?
smited at this point.
You pronounce the J's like H's, right?
Mm-mm.
Like jalapeno? Like Freya Peno? You know what I'm talking about?
You are gonna get
She will holla at you
smoked.
if you want, so...
He is gonna smite you.
Let Freya Peno holla at you. What's up?
I'm not even really sure how she smites people, but she's definitely gonna smite you.
Cats, I would assume.
Or falcons is probably
I would
much
assume
more
that she's
likely.
going to throw a bunch of cats at you.
If you just have like a falcon come and like dive bomb you within the next couple of days, I am gonna
Birds
laugh
love me. So
hard.
that's
That is
not gonna
true.
happen.
Birds do love you.
Yeah.
In fact, all animals.
I'm pretty
love
certain if
you.
I whistle and spin in a circle in my sarong, they're just going to land on my hands. So
Yeah.
I think I could just collect birds at this point in time. The
yeah.
only animal who doesn't listen to me is the deer. There's just one. He's an asshole.
Oh no, there's two.
And well, there's just one who's constantly trying to fight me about my garden, and I will punch a deer. So, I mean, not really. Those things are huge, but
Yeah, they're pretty big, even the little
I'm
ones.
just gonna run at him and just be like, blah, 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 blah. And he just backs up like 2 feet and waits. Like,
And they're gonna be
is that what
like,
you're done with?
"Geez, man, why are you harshing my food time vibe?"
Don't eat my trees and my plants, dude.
Yeah, although the tree that they were eating realized
tall.
it
What's
very
up?
quick, and it grew very tall very fast.
That tree's just like, you can't eat me when I'm way up here. Although I'm pretty certain that's how we forced the giraffes to start happening. So, the giraffification.
The giraffification of the deer.
Yeah, the giraffification of deer. It's like gigantification of deep sea animals, but on land when trees start knowing stuff, it's the giraffification.
Oof, I mean, don't give him ideas. We don't need what happened in the happening to happen here.
I'm pro every animal turning into giraffes. Giraffodiles.
No, I was talking about the trees becoming sentient and deciding to like get nuts. Giraffodiles, my dude.
Yeah, that's crocodiles with long necks. The most horrifying of all potential crocodiles. You're welcome for that image in your minds, by the by. Yeah, we should probably get back on the subject of this podcast, or I will continue to name animals as though they're real, and they are not.
It's a little bit like we have the Benny Hill music still playing in our heads.
I know, right?
For those of you listening right away, you should definitely search for Boris Johnson Benny Hill music because it's hilarious. Okay, so this episode is a deep dive on the Norse goddess Freyja.
Yeah.
Which does in fact have a mostly silent J in the way that Americans say it.
In the way that all people say it, nobody says it Freyja. That's definitely not true.
I can't really I don't know how they
I'm
pronounce
real
it
sure
in
that
other
that's not how that's
places.
said. Let me tell you what, if you're from not around here or something, honestly, even if you are from around here, and you pronounce it Freyja, and like that's the way that you were taught to pronounce it or whatever, tell me. I would be very interested to know that my joke was actually partly right. I love when reality confirms my insanity
Actually,
is correct. That's
strike that.
delicious.
Don't tell us. He doesn't
Right?
need that ego boost.
More of that ego boost is the correct way to frame that. Yeah. So, boom. So, anywho, what is Freyja the goddess of?
So Freyja is the goddess of a bunch of things, like most of them. Oh no!
Fast boy. Did you escape?
He escaped.
Oof.
Oh my God. No, he's right there. Get him.
Die.
Oh my gosh. You guys, like a spider just like zoomed down and tried to run away right in front of
Brief
Jonathan.
story, just in case you weren't watching this. So, first of all, our house might be where all spiders come from. We're sorry about that.
We're definitely not doing it on purpose.
Yeah, it's definitely not on purpose. There's just like a lot of spiders out here in the redwoods. Secondly, our spiders like to descend from the skies upon us or real near us. So you always have to be like partially unfocused in the middle distance, because that shit, you're just going to be walking in my house one day and be like, and all of a sudden this spider's going to like slam into focus right here. It didn't drop down. It's just done been there for a while.
And then you always have to have like some sort of napkin nearby.
Yeah. And then secondly, let me tell you about an accord I have with all spiders. It's the human spider accords. It is, if you're a spider and you're doing sweet Anansi shit, like murdering bugs that I don't want around my garden and house, good job. Keep doing your job. Love it. You're good pal. I got no problem with spiders. But if I have to see you in my house touching my stuff, dead. Immediately dead. Primarily because I don't want spiders crawling around in my fucking house. That shit's awful. And the spiders that we have here are both like adorable tiny garden spiders that make dope webs, and then like humongous monster spiders that I'm pretty certain are trying to take people's cattle, or whatever the point of the Arachnids movie was, because they are huge. And they don't give, they're just like, what are you, a person? Smush me, bitch. It's gonna take effort. You're gonna feel it, because that's it's gonna be.
You're gonna regret things.
Yeah.
It's
so
like
that's
it's
our
like
life.
smushing a tiny lobster.
Welcome to living in the redwoods in an old cabin.
Okay, all right.
Back on to Freyja. She's definitely the goddess of spiders, right?
Let's try this again. She is definitely not the goddess of spiders.
I don't know if there is any Norse god associated with spiders.
Loki.
Probably
is
Loki
with spiders. We actually talk about that.
Of course, it's Loki.
Yeah, we actually
spiders.
talk about that in our Loki deep dive episode. As a matter of fact,
elaborate commercial for our previous podcast episode. No, that's spider.
No, we definitely
just came down. That was not on
elaborate. In fact, Freyja and Loki don't really get along, so she is maybe definitely
brief TLDR on the Norse mythology. Almost everybody and Loki don't get along.
That is correct,
because Loki is he's a bit of a dick.
He's a bit of a dick. Yeah,
he's a bit of a dick.
So, like I was saying, Freyja is the Norse goddess of abundance, beauty, crafts, death, eroticism, farming. She's a goddess of fertility and flowers, but also of foresight and gold. Yes, gold.
Oof.
Love,
early 2000s reference,
luck,
guys.
You're welcome. Magic, the moon, passion, physical well-being, romance, cedar magic, which is specifically a Norse type of magic for seeing and influencing the future. She's also a goddess of sex, of trances, war, wealth, witchcraft, and wisdom. So we got a lot of stuff. In addition to those things that she is attributed to, she is also queen of the Valkyries. She is the priestess of sacrificial offerings, and she rules over Folkvangr, which receives half of those who die in battle. So basically like a different version of Valhalla.
Yeah.
And her hall within Folkvangr is called Sessrumnir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like second Valhalla.
Yeah, actually, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Yeah. So we're gonna kind of circle back to that.
I imagine it's the whatever the other town is from The Simpsons to Springfield. You know, like they're the same town basically, but like whatever, they hate each other for some reason or some nonsense like that. Like, listen, I watched The Simpsons, but it has been a very long time. That show stopped being funny, like a while ago.
Like in the 90s.
Yeah, so.
For me. So there's a lot of different names that Freyja is known by. And it's actually quite interesting because part of that is because she appears in a bunch of different stories, like more than many of the other.
Yeah, it's not like
deities.
she was only the goddess of like 2 or 3 things, right? I mean, that list was, I don't know, whatever, 5,000 words long, so.
Yeah.
She's the goddess of like everything except for the things that all the other gods are gods of.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm the goddess of everything. And somebody was like, can I do water? And she was like, you can have water, but everybody else, I'm everything else still. Heads up. So.
Well, in the Prose Edda, it is said that Freyja is the most approachable of the deities in the Norse pantheon.
Sure, yeah.
And she has so many names and epithets because of her travels to find her husband Odr. which we will also talk about in a little bit. So here are a few of the epithets for Freyja. So she is known as Geth, the giver, she who gives prosperity and happiness. This is actually possibly related to a sea goddess aspect. It's thought that maybe she was originally a sea goddess, but also like her dad's a sea god. So, you know,
that would technically make her a sea
inherited
princess.
Bits there. Exactly.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So
she's also known as Mardol, the sea brightener. And this one is another kind of interesting prosperity sea type of thing, because sea brightener is really sort of a term that indicates that she brightens the seas, but that doesn't mean that she's making them lighter or she's lighting them up. It means that she's increasing
she is the
fishing harvest of those seas.
Definitely the glowing thing.
I mean, there are places in the world where the seas glow. So there's that. Yeah. She's also known as Horn, which means flaxen. Usually she is shown with blonde hair, although that's not always the case. So that could be part of that. But she's also considered the goddess of gold, and gold and the color of flax are not far off. Yeah. She is known as Shialf, which is the shaker. That's actually a connection to her necklace, the Brisingamen. She also is known as Valkyria, Lady of the Slain, which refers to her role in Folkvangir, or Vanadis, the child of the Vanir, or the Dis of the Vanir. She's often called daughter, sister, wife, mother of, you know, whoever her kin is. Possessor of the Fallen Slain, my personal favorite. That one is super cool.
Yeah,
the most glorious of the goddesses.
I like to add slain to the fallen. Like, she's the possessor of the fallen. Well, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
Right? Because they have to be dope. They have to have died in battle, so they were slain, as opposed to just, like, dying, and that's when you just go to hell.
Yeah, exactly. So Possessor of the Fallen Slain, like, super cool.
Yeah.
The Possessor of the Brisingamen, the most glorious of the goddesses, and, last but certainly not least, the Mistress of Cats.
Yeah. Primarily because she rides a cart pulled by two cats.
That is correct.
Two gray cats.
Yeah. She is often described as having braided hair, sometimes worn like long in a braid or several braids, and sometimes worn up or looped. Fairly common kind of hairstyle there. Most of the time she's portrayed as being blonde, but sometimes you see that she is portrayed as having like red or auburn hair.
Sure.
And she is usually shown completely naked, although I think that the reason why she is shown completely naked is either because of her role as a sex and like fertility type goddess,
and she's like beautiful in all
and she's
stories,
like beautiful
right?
and stuff, but like really most of that kind of iconography of her dates to the like sort of late
30s.
it sort of dates to the 1800s when people got really interested in like Norse culture, and they were just like paint all the ladies naked with only like a towel to cover a bit.
Yeah, when they're just like, hey, let's paint a naked lady, and the church is like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, doing research, man? About ancient stuff? And they're like, all right, dude, but
they're
you better
like
name
those,
that shit, okay.
They're like those silly old-time heathens didn't know how clothes worked.
Yeah, right? They're like, those savages, they didn't have clothes, and the church is like, yeah, and they're just like, yeah, we're gonna sell a bunch of these fucking paintings.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
But she's often shown in a short skirt. Like, you know, she's wearing like a top, right, also.
Oh,
but she's often shown wearing a short skirt, which is interesting because that really sort of like, you can, the naked V short skirt look sort of depends on what like role she's playing, in particular like the sex goddess thing or the death goddess thing.
You can have a naked death goddess, right? That would be weird. No.
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it too. So what's up?
She's also shown wearing the Brisingamen. It's a necklace made of amber that is created by 4 dwarves. And it is said that this necklace glittered like stars and was more valuable than a mountain of gold.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
And in these deep dive episodes, we typically tell one of the myths. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you how she came across the Brisingamen. Now, it's a pretty short one, but again, she's in a lot of different myths. So I just picked this one because I thought it was pretty cool. So there are 4 dwarves. And they lived in a cave.
There were these 4 dwarves.
Yeah,
there are actually more than just 4 dwarves.
So there were these 4 dwarves.
Yeah.
Alfred, Dvalin, Berlinger and Greer. And they lived in a cave and they were crafting this necklace. And Freyja saw them crafting this necklace and was like, hey, that necklace is very dope. I would very much like it. What can I pay you for this necklace? And they were like, I don't know. We got like a lot of stuff. We're like dwarves. And she was like, what if I give you a whole bunch of silver? And they were like, nah, we got a bunch over here in the corner. And then she was like, okay, what about a pile of gold? And they're like, oh no, our gold pile is like right around the corner. We're good. And she's like, okay, well, what can I give you? And they were like, sex?
Yeah.
And she was like, okay. And they were like, okay, but each of us gets a turn. So she spent a night with each of the 4 dwarves, like 4 nights in a row, basically, with each of the 4 dwarves in her bower, which was purported to be a place that, unless Freyja wanted you to come into her bower, you could not enter.
Yeah.
Basically, it had like warding on it.
Yeah. She had a magic bed.
She had a magic bed.
Yeah.
Magic bedroom. And so she spent the night with each of these 4 dwarves, and then they were like, here's your necklace. And she was like, yes.
Yeah. They were just like, ha ha ha, we got this. And she's just like, these guys don't even know who I am. What's wrong with them?
Basically.
What a bunch of dumbasses.
Yeah, she was like, I am a goddess. Let me give you a bunch of gold for this beautiful thing. And they were like, no, we're good.
Yeah. We got that. We got that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting to note.
It's a great Freyja story.
It is a great Freyja story. I super loved it. I am very pro sex work, especially when it is done the right way. That is consensual.
Everybody involved is consensual.
Yeah. And the people in ancient times tended to have a very different view about sex work than we do now.
We're real Puritans about a bunch of shit.
In particular,
nowadays.
We've talked about this a bit in our Aphrodite deep dive. If you're interested in hearing more about Aphrodite's role as being the patron goddess, basically, of sex workers, you can definitely give a listen to that episode. But in many ancient cultures, sex work was a way for women who were traditionally not really allowed to be property holders, like as a generality, to have property and to make an income. But it was not necessarily even seen as a negative thing. That's really a lot of coloring that we see from a puritanical sort of standpoint.
Everybody knows who we can thank for that idea, guys.
Drinking game time.
Yeah, every time. These motherfuckers.
Every time, guys. It's not like I'm trying to do it. It just keeps coming up. So in addition to Freyja wearing the Brisingamen, she is also very frequently seen in a chariot pulled by 2 cats. Or she is seen like, wandering around or standing and flanked by 2 cats, not necessarily being in a chariot. And it is of note that the cats that she would have with her are not like the traditional house cats that we have here in America. They are a much more wild and large and fluffy version of cat. That doesn't mean that your cat is not sort of a link to Freyja. It just means that when I saw a lot of the iconography, people are basically drawing their own cats as Freyja's pets. And I just thought it was interesting because the type of cats that she would have used were a totally different type of breed.
I used had.
Yes, the type of cats that she had.
Yeah.
And used to pull her chariot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely different kind of cats. Definitely different kind of cats. In my mind, saber-toothed tigers. Sort of like He-Man, just 2 saber-toothed tigers. Right? Primarily because that's badass. And in my opinion, everything should be increased in badassery.
Well, and, that's an interesting thing is if you go far enough back, you can look at Proto-Indo-European worship, and it is possible that that in some way she was the idea of Freyja was originally a goddess who had basically saber-toothed cats, such as all of these animals that existed when our ancestors were basically cave people, and we didn't have the same kind of animals around that we do today. So that's not to say that her cats are saber-toothed cats, but it's a possibility that could be where it came from.
Headcanon.
She is also often seen riding her boar, Hildisvini, and she just rides into battle on this boar, and that is how she collects the fallen slain.
Have you ever seen a boar charge something? Yeah. That's a real threatening fucking move, dude. I mean, listen, I'm not saying a lady on a chariot pulled by cats isn't in its own right horrifying. to behold, right? But a lady charging on a boar, even more horrifying.
Especially if she's naked.
Yeah. Oh my god. Especially if she's naked. Well, that's that thing where it's like, if you're seeing a bunch of people in armor and one dude starts taking his armor off, you know that guy is just doing that to increase his speed, right? That's that classic, like, DBZ. Like, they're in the battle arena and bloody what's-his-name takes off his robes and they, like, crush the earth beneath him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I guess I can take these robes off and now I'm a bunch lighter, so I'm so much faster. And you're like, oh no, we've made a mistake, guys. You know?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So she's also seen holding a distaff, which is a rod that is used to hold unspun fibers for weaving, a stave or a scepter. And most of the time when you see her holding those, she is on her boar and basically riding into battle. Sometimes she's standing, just like holding them all regal-like and stuff. But most of the time it's when she's on the boar. And then lastly, another important part of her magical artifacts and iconography is a cloak of falcon feathers. And this cloak allows the ability to shapeshift into a falcon. And this is actually an integral part of many, many stories about Freyja and about the Norse gods in particular. We talked in the deep dive episode for Thor about the time that Thor and Loki went and pretended that Thor was a lady so that Freyja didn't have to marry a big oafish giant.
Yeah.
And part of the way that they did that was using a falcon cloak.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many Norse stories that I'm in love with, especially surrounding Thor. Thor's stories are like the most bombastic of bardic tales. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because Thor's always up to shenanigans, and I love shenanigans dearly.
There's a lot of shenanigans.
There's a lot of shenanigans, especially when him and Loki team up. When those two guys team up, I can see why they did the, like, make them brothers in the comic books.
Yes.
Because in the legends, they're very like, let's team up and then just like start shit. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the story where Thor dresses up like a lady, which is in itself a violently insane statement, right? Because it's Thor. No hate, but it's not pretty boy Chris Hemsworth. Let me tell you what. Traditional descriptions of Thor.
Although, if that is your headcanon for Thor...
Oh, yeah. Like, if that's your headcanon for Thor, because that's what you click with, like, rock and roll, right? Like, yeah. You know, whatever's clever, dude. Everybody's waveform collapses a little differently. But, like, yeah, just him dressing up like a lady and being, like... But, like, not understanding how to act ladylike, so he, like, demolishes some beer. And the giant, or the guy, like the giant who's trying to marry her is just like, oh, she had quite a thirst. And Loki's just like, she was really nervous beforehand, so she hasn't drank anything in a while. Don't worry about it.
She's just nervous about the marriage
thing. And then Thor just like demolishes a bunch of food, and he's just like, she's got quite a hunger. And he's like, it's because she hasn't eaten for like a long time. She's very nervous about all of this stuff. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's so good.
Man.
Yeah, we tell that tale in the Thor deep dive, which is episode 10. If you want to hear more about that or more about Thor.
Yeah.
And speaking of hearing more about other deities, let's talk about who she's related to.
Yeah.
So her parents, her father is Njord, who is god of the sea, and Njord's sister is unnamed. And that is her mother. But it is possible that his sister, her mother, was Nerthus, which would have been the goddess of prosperity. And I think that that's really just because...
Sort of lines up with brightening the sea
and abundance and all that other kind of stuff, too. Yeah. So she has one sibling, and that is Freyr. And he is basically associated with the same things as Freyja, but the masculine version.
He's just dude Freyja.
He's just dude Freyja, basically. Yeah. And as far as consorts...
In my mind, he's also riding naked on a boar with long golden hair flowing in the background. And they're just like, I don't know which one's scarier, but I don't like either of this. We quit the war. Never mind. We're going home. Toodaloo with this shit. Right? They're just like, you know, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying, I should write the movies for the Norse Pantheon movies, because they're going to be a lot funner.
They would be pretty hilarious. We've actually done a pretty like intense headcanon of who we think what deities should be if there were to be like like a movie.
Yeah, like Gods of Egypt, but not a garbage movie.
Yeah,
including
or
the
like
Egyptian
Clash of the
gods.
Titans, but like a gooder movie. Yes.
Wow.
A gooder movie.
First of all, she only means the new Clash of the Titans. The classic Clash of the Titans is fucking absolute masterpiece.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure that we define the fact that the new Clash of the Titans,
not the old,
garbage.
not the
New Clash of the Titans, buku bucks.
Yeah.
So just put that over.
Yeah. So we might be doing
Clarifying
a video about that because we spent like a whole weekend just going nuts.
Yeah.
With
just
fan casting,
just super movies.
Yeah. Fan casting deities. Okay, so consorts. So Freyja is married to Odr, and he is a traveling bard. So as we mentioned before, he travels a lot, and then she has to like basically go get him. Not she has to go save him, but he just wanders off, and she's like, "Where did he go?"
I get it.
I have to go find him. I definitely resonated with this, and we just had a conversation about how you wander into the forest with like some locals. So that is her husband, but he is not by any means the only person that she's slept with. We talked about those 4 dwarfs.
Obviously.
Together, those two have 2 children, which are Gersemi and Hnus. And actually, both of those children's names mean treasure. So they are, very dear to their hearts, like a treasure. Yeah. And you can hear more about some of these Norse gods in addition to additional ones, which we have not named, in episode 33, The Norse Family Tree. Yeah. And we've also done deep dive on Thor, which we just mentioned, and we've done a deep dive previously on Loki, and also a deep dive on Odin, which is sort of put together with Odin and modern heathenism. Yeah. So we have a whole bunch of resources there if you're looking for that sort of thing.
Yeah. And if there is any particular question you have about both Freyja and or any other particular Norse god, let us know that question. You can comment it on the YouTube video. You can send us a message on social media. Technically, I have like a form you can fill out to email us on my website.
Yep.
But it's so that way we'll bring it up in one of our pub chats and answer the question there, where we're able to just kind of like briefly touch on and answer fan questions. Yeah. I almost said user questions, and that doesn't make any sense. I don't know why I thought that.
It's close, but not there.
It's not there. Yeah.
You can also request a deep dive episode on pretty much anything, and you don't have to be a patron or a Patreon member, one of our Patreon supporters. Yeah, it'll just get on the list. I mean, the list is it's hefty. It is a long list. We have a lot of things to say.
We have a lot of plans and a lot of things to say. Yeah.
But it will be there. You don't have to be a Patreon supporter to request or ask a question.
Yeah, of course.
So Freyja's name, it means lady.
That sounds accurate, I guess.
Yeah. And Freyr, her brother's name, basically means lord. Yep. So they're basically lord and lady. It's interesting the origin of her name sort of gets into this whole like big Pandora's box of like interesting like conjecture, because the thing is we don't really know where this came about because we have not traveled back in time to figure that out, and there aren't really records.
Not yet. If you have the stuff, the whirly machine or the car that goes too fast and then explodes into fire, whatever, like hit us up.
Totally.
Yeah. I got some places to visit and some people to punch. So yeah. It's gonna be all right. I won't change history.
Very specific.
I won't change history, but some historical figures gonna have black eyes. Let me tell you what. Yeah, so you're welcome for that.
So some scholars think that Freyja's name, meaning lady, may have been an epithet which actually replaced her true name long ago. Sure. And that she evolved out of being an entirely different goddess. And there is a similar debate that kind of ties into this, that is that Freyja and Frigg might actually be the same goddess. That's and the idea is that this may be in ancient times. They were the same goddess, and Freyja is more of the maiden, even though she is married, she has children. She occupies closer to the maiden aspect, whereas Frigg occupies closer to the mother aspect. So you can kind of see where that's tying into there. And they have some very similar things that they are both attributed to them as far as powers. Like they both do magic. They can both see the future. And while Freyja will tell the future, Frigg will not. So there's a whole bunch of things that really sort of like potentially tie them together into one female goddess figure. In addition to that, Freyja is a name that you sort of don't really see in outside of like the northern Scandinavia area, but Frigg you see throughout the Germanic region going back into ancient times. So some people think that it's because of that too. And there are also people who think that Freyja is connected to Isis, very particularly Isis of the Suebi. But we talked about it a bit in the Isis deep dive that we've done, a lot of, and also actually in the Aphrodite deep dive, that a lot of these female goddesses kind of like sort of meld together and pick up the characteristics of one another.
Sure.
So a lot of the things that are associated with Freyja are actually kind of associated with Isis and a little bit associated with Aphrodite. All three of them are female goddesses who are mothers, who are associated with war in some way. Isis less than others, but the rest of them kind of are. They're all associated with the sea in a very particular way.
Yeah.
They all have very similar iconography, regardless of things like hair color, skin color. There's a lot of synchronization there, and it's hard to tell why that is. It could just be because people were traveling and trading in ancient times, and they were like, "Hey, is that your goddess? I have a goddess that's kind of like that too." And then they sort of like mishmash and meld.
Yeah. Well, certainly. If you see somebody being like, Aphrodite, protect me from this storm whilst on a boat, and you're just like, Freyja, protect me from the storm on the boat, but this guy's just like, Aphrodite's also like super naked and hot all the time, and he's just like, Freyja's also super naked and hot all the time. So boom.
Exactly.
Right? It's exactly that thing. It's sort of okay. Well, it's funny because like when you think about it, like in a forwards direction of time, you can sort of understand the like sort of like connections and melding and changing and mishmashing and all that kind of stuff. But we can also use this knowledge as we research different gods and goddesses throughout all pantheons and practices and faiths. You can use this to sort of look backwards in time to like the connective tissue of like, let's say, the Germanic people and like a powerful female goddesses being attached to the ocean, or your Indo-European people having powerful female goddesses being attached to like the ocean and also fertility, let's say, or things like that. You see what I'm saying?
Bears is actually much more common.
Bears.
But yes,
right?
Bears.
No, but yeah, there's a person I follow on TikTok, and I for the life of me cannot remember the name, that talks about this, about like how like we're able to put together that like there might have been some goddess of a particular style like prehistory, because of all the cultures that budded off of that original culture all have like similarly connected and associated like goddesses that all share very common traits and things like that. So you can use it much like you like do historical research into language and look backwards through language. You can look backwards through practice relative to like location and time. And I know we talk a lot about Proto-Indo-European deities and sort of the roots there. If you're not familiar with it, Proto-Indo-European is basically sort of in that area, which is what it sounds like. It generally takes place in sort of the Neolithic times, where we're starting to see, there's passage tombs and there's Stonehenge, and we're seeing a lot of that stuff there, but very particularly in Europe. And I do have plans to do a sort of deep dive on what that is, but that is something that's going to take a ton of research from my end, and we're ways out from that. But do know that we will tackle Proto-Indo-European deities and what we know of them. Most of it is stuff that we
think we know based on clues and archaeological findings. So it's a really interesting sort of subset of the research there. But getting back to Freyja, another role and deity that's kind of associated with Freyja is actually the Virgin Mary. So your drinking game moment again. Many of Freyja's roles in Germanic areas were changed to feature the Virgin Mary during and after the Christianization of Europe. Basically, everything that was not associated with sex and fertility kind of got pushed into the Virgin Mary through Freyja. So in many areas there, you can see that change to being one from the other. So another deity that Freyja is often paired with or syncretized with. And switching gears entirely, Freyja generally stays behind when her husband leaves. I had mentioned that earlier.
Sure, yeah.
Right? And when she stays behind and her husband leaves, she cries tears of red gold.
Sure.
Because she's upset that he's gone.
That's a bit dramatic, but yes. Yeah. This guy, such a lovely singer and bard that that he leaves and just tears.
Yeah, basically. And sometimes, because of that, sometimes gold is called Freyja's tears, or Freyja's weepings, or rain or showers from Freyja's eyes, or, my personal favorite, Odur's bedfellow's eye rain.
Well, Odur's bedfellow's eye rain is both a mouthful and also just a weird way to make sure that you're saying the man thing, but you actually mean the lady thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's like a nightmarish way to do that.
It is a pretty nightmarish
That's very
way
roundabout, but, you know, language is weird, so I guess there you go.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of stories associated with Freyja, and as we've mentioned before, there's Thor deep dive that you can listen to. We talk about the origin of Sleipnir, which she is also a part of that, and we talk about that in episode 14, the Loki deep dive, because Loki is Odin's horse's mom.
That's right, dude.
Yeah.
Loki, that guy, all shenanigans all day.
Yeah. And Freyja is sometimes referred to as a concubine of Odin's. And there are a few myths associated with that.
Mm-hmm. Which just lends more to the idea that Freyja and Frigg are actually the same person, and Frigg is her name, and Freyja is her title.
Yes, right? And also Odin and Odur being the same person because, they're both dudes who go a-wandering who like poetry and songs.
Odin loves a wanderin'. Let me tell you what. He's literally one of his epithets is the Great Wanderer.
Yeah.
So yeah. So you see there's a lot of like supportive structure there. And I know people who practice in both directions. Some people practice in the like Odin is Odur and Frigg is Freyja.
Yeah.
And I know people who practice that they're separate things. And really the separation is primarily because Frigg is a Vanir.
Yes.
Whereas
Freyja is a Vanir. Frigg is an Aesir.
Yeah, Freyja is a Vanir and Frigg is an Aesir. And that's one of those like weird things where where's the separation? Why is this happening? In some tales, it's very like the Aesir were doing stuff, and then all of a sudden these other gods, the Vanir, showed up, and you're like, I'm sorry, all of a sudden? We're not going to get a description on this? And they're like, nope, they were already there. Ciao.
All of a sudden,
you know? So a lot of, I've seen the argument that the reason why it's logically separated is because of the whole Aesir Vanir thing, and how Aesir are generally like gods, the gods of like people gods, and the Vanir are like nature gods or vaguely associated with like stuff pre-people, right? So like Frigg and Odur are like actual, like, or Freyja and Odur are actually Frigg and Odin, and they just like renamed them when they were just like, all right, we need to like define this stuff a bit more better, people style, this previous god thing a wee bit confused, or something to that extent. So I've seen practitioners of like Norse paganism kind of approach it in both directions, and it's sort of like like, our rules, and if you don't, like, you do you, bro, is like the main thing.
Yeah.
So like, if you want to believe them as separate, or you want to believe them as together, that's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and there is another sort of interpretation and hypothesis for that, and that is that not only were Freyja and Frigg both attached to Oder, but also maybe Freyja or Odin, but also maybe Freyja was also attached to Oder. It was not uncommon for two women to be married to a man in ancient times, in particular in Norse. In ancient Norse culture, this would have usually been for marriages between political alliances or to move up the sort of socioeconomic chain.
Yeah, sure.
But it also could be associated with blending families together,
Sure.
military conquest, but also polyamorous relationships were not unheard of in ancient times.
Northern knife wives.
Yeah, and there were many deities and many pantheons with multiple lovers. We've talked about this in several episodes, too many for me to really reference back to. But definitely we talk about it in Aphrodite deep dive. But there was a lot of polyamorous relationships back then. But that doesn't mean that all relationships were polyamorous, right?
Both accepting polyamorous relationships and Zeus.
Maybe
toxic
a little
polyamorous
relationships. But it is certainly there. It is certainly a possibility that could be what it is. It was very common in ancient times, particularly in the Proto-Indo-European area, to have multiple wives like that. There's a lot of things that you can read associated with that, a lot of memes as well. So, there's all that. So we don't know what the deal is with Frigg and Freyja and Odin and Oder. Yeah. And it is likely that it'll probably continue to evolve and change as time goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of the reason why that may have changed is because of the Christianization of Europe. Although at the time of the Christianization of Europe, the idea of having multiple wives, not necessarily polyamorous relationships where there's multiple husbands, multiple wives, different subsets of people, but specifically men having multiple wives, was sort of like on the down slope.
Yeah, it was already like a finger wag. No. Yes. In most Germanic cultures, far as I've seen in like papers and books and such, right? So it wasn't like Christians came along and everybody was just like free love, and the Christians were like whoa, like everybody else had already whoa, and the Christians came along and were just like, we also agree with you on this.
Well, mostly it's because of that, and in certain parts of Abrahamic religions there are references to having multiple wives. So everybody's kind of done it. There's a lot of reasons why, and really currently the main reason why we think that people sort of got away from that is like low-key capitalism, is because the churches wanted more money, and if you had one husband basically and a bunch of wives, all that income stream is only coming from the husband. But if you have a bunch of husbands and wives, you're getting more money from that. Yeah. In addition to
little dark potential truth about monogamy v polyamory with regard to religious oligarchies and capitalism. Yeah. It's just a theory, but I mean, so's a bunch of stuff. So
well, it may have also played a role in the diversity of our species as well. If you have a bunch of people married to each other, especially if it's one man and multiple women, you're going to have probably a higher chance that you're going to need to go outside of your own little tribe or group of people to continue to have genetic diversity. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into there. Yeah. But one of the things that also happened during the Christianization of Europe was that Freyja's roles were very largely demonized, in particular sex work and being a witch. She was definitely called a witch in a bad way, and she was also called a whore, although there were some roles of hers and some places where worship of Freyja survived. And Freyja's erotic qualities became a easy target for this new religion, Christianity, in which an asexual virgin was the ideal woman. Freyja was called a whore and a harlot by the holy men and the missionaries, whereas many of her functions in the everyday lives of men and women, such as protecting the vegetation and supplying assistance in childbirth, were transferred to the Virgin Mary. So it's a little quote that we got there. In Iceland, up until the late 1700s, Freyja was actually called upon using magical staves pretty commonly. And in Sweden, her role as a fertility goddess lasted pretty strong through the late 1800s. It's not very long ago. There are also folk tales to this day that indicate that Freyja is responsible for sheet lightning, which is a type of lightning that is generally not deadly to humans, because it stays up in the clouds. And as opposed to hitting the earth.
I was just like, I'm not gonna trust some lightning, but I guess okay. But yeah, they'll just talk about cloud lightning.
Yeah,
cloud to cloud lightning. So sheets horizontal.
Yes. And the folk tales basically...
I thought you meant that lightning where you get a piece of metal and you go and you shake it like for theater. She's just like randomly the goddess of that noise. And the guy backstage being like, it's a storm, you know? that kind of sheet lightning.
Oh, if anybody is the god of that sound, it is Q.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Shakespearean ass dude. Okay. So these folk tales about the sheet lightning basically say that the flashes of light from sheet lightning are just Freyja using her flint to strike a fire to see if the rye is ready to harvest. Because she's going to do it at night.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why you would do it at night, but that's just the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just like, does Rye do something weird around Flint in the Shadow Times?
No.
Because that would be interesting, and that means we're going to
No, and these folktales have actually been recorded all the way up until like the 1960s.
That's awesome.
So it's a very, it's still a very like popular thing to say.
Yeah.
And
that's
also
very cool. I did not know she was associated with sheet lightning. It is very cool on the ground. It is horrifying when you're in the sky. I've been on an airplane in a storm where you're just like, look at that cloud, punching that other cloud with lightning. We should probably not be up here, guys. Can we get down? And of course the pilot is just like that. They're telling us the storm's too close to the airport, so we're just gonna circle, I guess, for a while. Your stuff's gonna be late. Welcome to Earth.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. Oof, boy, that was a
and then
layover.
The last place that her role was really preserved, that's still like lasted to pretty modern times, is that on Christmas night, it is said that she comes and shakes apple trees to ensure a good harvest. As a result,
like
some
dead
people
apple trees.
Well, they're not dead. They're just like in hibernation.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
like without leaves and such, apple trees.
Well, I mean, maybe you're not.
Also, just the nightmare, and I understand that it would be wind in reality, but the pure nightmare of like Christmas night, like having the ham or whatever with the family, and you look out the window and like just one tree in the middle of your orchard is just like shake, 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 shake. And then the next tree, shake, 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 shake. I would be like, hey, guess what? Family, pack it up. We're all gone.
Yeah, right? And because of that, people would actually leave apples in the apple trees to help ensure a good harvest.
That's how you frost distill apples to make that sweet, sweet sauce.
Yeah, that's probably why. That stuff was there. So, but it was bad luck basically to leave your plow out, because if you left your plow out, Freyja would sit on it and then it would become unusable.
Yeah. All of this seems like pretty reasonable rules for being an apple orchard farmer.
Yeah, so, to being an orchard person.
Being an orchardist or whatever the term is for that.
Yeah, it's interesting because this has to do with apples, and in Norse mythology, you'd think that the apples are just Idun because that's, her role. Yep. But Freyja is also associated with apples, and I think that goes back to that like love, fertility type of thing. Yeah. And that may even be a newer bit, but apples existed in that time and even into ancient times, although mostly in Germanic and Scandinavian areas, you would have had crab apples, which would have not been sweet. I don't know if you've ever bitten into a crab apple not knowing what it is, but it's
I'll tell you what though, crab apple or not, you can make a sweet apple pie with them.
You sure can.
Yeah, and you can make a good apple sauce,
sure
and you can make a great apple cider with them, like a hard cider with them. Crab apples are still very useful.
In fact,
they might not be like golden deliciouses, which also any apple that isn't a green tart apple is a gross apple in my opinion. I'm just gonna stand here on this hill for a second and fight the legions of fucking Fuji apple monsters and those like red delicious monstrosities of soft sweetness. No, I want a cold, hard green apple that is tart. That is the way an apple is supposed to taste. I will die on this hill.
I am not a fan of red delicious apples.
Stand red apples.
I do not like them.
So gross to me.
They're very like pithy. I don't like that.
Also, they're pithy, yeah, but I abhor sweet.
I don't mind
like
a sweet, juicy apple, regardless of the color.
I'm
unless
always
it's
green
red.
apples.
The red apples are just always a little gross for me.
Green grapes are also better than blue and red grapes. So, wow. Just putting that out there. Green, better plants. What's up? Better living through color science. Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about Folkvangir and Sestrumnir. Get away from the apples.
Walk away.
Walk away. Hard left turn. So, we're not really sure why Freyja receives half of those who die in battle. And it's said that Odin receives the other half of those who die in battle. And we know
she's the queen of the Valkyrie, and the Valkyrie are one that choose who go to where.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like Odin was like, hey, you have all these ladies with the horses and the wings and the flying and the choosing and whatnot. Like, maybe you can choose the dope ones for me. And she's like, that's a great idea. But if I'm going to choose some dope ones for you, I would also like some dope ones, please. And everybody was like, that seems reasonable because you're the one that's having to do the work. And this guy's sitting on a throne, you know, listening to birds whisper into his ears. So,
yeah,
reasonable.
Yeah. Well, we're not really sure why. It could be something like that. But we think that it may indicate that there were different initiations for warriors. So you may dedicate yourself to Odin or you may dedicate yourself to Freyja.
Yeah.
And possibly it's because that Freyja was considered a war goddess, just a slightly different type of war goddess. And we do know that she also presides over the Hijadnigavin. Oh man, I can't. I practiced that word like a bunch of times. And
Hjonningavig.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hjonningavig.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
You know, let me tell you what. As an English speaker, our language is trash. Because these languages are always make sense the way it's supposed to be pronounced, in my opinion. It
does make sense.
You know what I'm saying? But you have to be able to crash a bunch of sounds in your mouth together that as an English, because we speak like a dumb, slow language by relative comparison to some of the more elegant languages out there. And so we just like some of those sounds are not, like you look at that and you're like, I know what that sound should sound like. And then you go to say it and your mouth is just like, hey, buddy. Your tongue and your teeth aren't supposed to occupy
That's exactly
not
what
how
happens
you do
to me.
That.
Like academically, my brain voice understands how to say this word, and also most of these words that we pronounce and that we've talked about before. Like,
also, if I am pronouncing something
when it
wrong,
comes to my actual mouth, I can't always make it make the sounds.
I will disagree with you because I'm stubborn, but please tell me if I'm pronouncing something wrong.
Like the word sieve, S-I-E-V-E.
Yeah, it's sieve.
It's sieve. Anyway,
just always called it a sieve. Whatever, it's not important.
Freyja presides over this never-ending battle that lasts until Ragnarok, basically, where she resurrects anyone who is killed.
Yeah.
As well as we know that she rides into battle on a boar. So we do know that Freyja is a war goddess, although she is in most modern times really thought of as more of a love or witchcraft goddess, which is interesting because Aphrodite was also a war goddess who was also associated with love, although not particularly with the afterlife. Yeah. If you want to listen to more about Aphrodite, check out episode 6, which is our deep dive on her. And for Freyja, there is a link to Folkvangir and her hall Sestrumnir with something that is called stone ships. These are a burial custom in what we would consider now to be Viking areas, where a grave is surrounded by stones placed in the shape of a ship. That doesn't mean it looks physically like a ship, but it's basically like if you were to lay bricks out on the ground in the shape of a ship.
Yeah, an outline.
Yeah, an outline of a ship from the top down.
Yeah.
You usually would have two taller stones at the front and back. To emulate a Viking ship. Sometimes these would have masts. Sometimes they were all cobbled in, and sometimes they were just simply outlines. It's very interesting stuff. We're only really in the beginning stages of understanding what these things are and what they mean. And if you're interested, for more information, we'll probably do a segment on it in one of our pub chats. But until then, look up the Gelling Stone Ship for more info. That's Jelling Stone Ship. It is one of the largest ones we've ever discovered. It's not in the greatest of shape, but thank you, looters. But it is super interesting, and it's very neat to see. In fact, near us there is a stone ship that it's not ancient. It's a modern one. It's a modern one, and it is built to honor those who are lost at sea just off the coast near where we live. Very cool stuff. And it is possible that Sestrumnir, her hall with Invocation, was originally a ship that ended up in a field. Or a hall shaped like a ship.
Yeah. Well, you've also seen that like a hall made out of a boat flipped upside down thing. That, like, so there's like that possibility, and also I have to point out the connection here between a god of death and a barge of death, because the Klingons, when they go into their afterlife, they are brought, good warriors who die honorably and in battle, are brought upon the barge of death to fight and drink and booze and murder forever in constant battle, because the Klingons are basically just space Vikings.
Yes.
And it's awesome, and I love their religion.
I know.
So I had to put that out there. If you want more on that, look at all of the B'Elanna Torres gets a little scary with her Klingon stuff episodes of Voyager. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Worf is the one who literally created, like, most of their culture. Like, no lie. But
like the actor
Worf legitimately did like a ton of work on this, with the writers to make it this big deal, to really develop this thing. But boy, they fleshed out a lot of the afterlife in Voyager with regard to B'Elanna Torres having to deal with coming to grips of being half human and half Klingon. Yeah. And it is good. Those are good episodes. I mean, I know people got opinions about that. They're wrong. It's okay. But, it's dope and very similar to this. So, just put that out there.
Yeah. And this ship thing furthers the idea that Isis and Freyja may have also been connected as well. Because Isis, we talk about it in our deep dive, which is episode 18. There is one of her worship days where you basically take a boat and like bring it to the river.
Well, isn't passage to the afterlife for Egyptians on a boat?
Generally, yes.
In like a sea of sand or some such.
Actually, that's a very common theme across many cultures.
The reason why I thought about that is because of bloody what's it's called on
because of Moon Knight.
Because of Moon Knight on the Discovery Plus on the Disney Plus. Jesus.
Well, and we also see that in Greek mythology.
Oh, sure.
It is possible that is another one of those things that's a holdover from a Proto-Indo-European thing. Sure. The afterlife being, sort of accessed by transiting a channel of water, so to speak.
Well, water's got, obviously always got some sort of mystical properties in pretty much everything everywhere. As well as, it's not like they really had other vessels. It's not like gods were picking you up in like Humvees.
Like an Uber?
Or like, they're like, we don't know what this is, but he picks you up in some sort of weird metal dragon with 4 wheels and it like honks and it's long and they're like, it's a bus. So obviously boat, most common apparatus, what with you can move people, other than like a cart, which isn't very impressive. So that makes sense. They didn't have airplanes and cars and such.
Correct.
Although airplanes would be dope.
Yeah. Also, many times a field, which her hall was in the middle of because of the necessity of having a big battle outside all the time. Yeah. Fields of grain and grasses and stuff like that are very commonly associated with the sea and are akin. Like
you ever seen a whole field of grain moving in the wind?
Yeah,
is exactly like the ocean. Same thing.
So there's a lot of parallels
totally
there that are
understand.
super interesting.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
So as far as worship and festivals go, the Norse pantheon looks at worship and festivals in a very different way than what we're used to talking about in the Celtic and in the Greek and even in the Egyptian side of things. Yep. So it's a lot less of this is this person's feast day and their festival and you have to honor them during it. It's more like here is a theme for a festival, and in the ancient Norse pantheon, most of these festivals lasted for a while. It was not uncommon for a festival to be an entire month. Yep. And we talk more about that in our episode on heathenry and modern Odinism, so definitely check that out. But there are a few festivals that particularly jive for what Freyja is associated with, although none of them are directly tied to Freyja. Specifically. So the first of those is Modronit, which is Mother's Night, and that is usually the night before the winter solstice. And that is a festival that celebrates ancestral mothers and goddesses and female family members. So all the lady folk and lady identifying folk.
Yeah. All the folk.
Yeah. The next one would be Eostar, or Ostara, that is the spring equinox, and that is very particularly one that is usually celebrated for an entire month. And their offerings are made to Eostar, goddess of spring and renewal. There are some scholars that think that Eostar and Freyja are basically the same person, just with different names and in slightly different regions or areas of the general European region. So that's definitely a good one there, especially when you're thinking about fertility and abundance and flowers, right? Makes sense? Yeah. Next is Blostomfrills, or Walpurgisnacht, which is usually right around the same time as Beltane in early May, and that is a flower and spring festival. Basically, we're looking at the same vibes there as we are for Ostara. So, we're looking at fertility, we're looking at, flowers, and we're looking at rebirth, and we're looking at abundance, and all of those things definitely vibe for Freyja. Yeah. And then we have Freysblot, or Lunasa, in the sort of Celtic modern witchcraft type thing. And that is a harvest festival. You'll notice the name is Freysblot, that is her brother, and you can pretty much count on that Freyja that works for her as well, since that is a harvest festival. We are talking about golden grain.
I have seen it with the A.
Yeah, I have also seen it with the A.
I have seen it Freyja's blot, not just Freysblot.
Yeah.
So you would also there's a whole thing about them maybe being the same person, and just a whole.
Well, and also
two sides of the same thing, right?
Them being lovers. It is one of my personal headcanon things that George R.R. Martin's idea for Cersei and Jaime Lannister was Freyja and Freyr. There are a few mythological sources that indicate that Freyja and her brother slept together often.
Yeah. And we're like weird,
exuberantly, shall we say?
Twins, like
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah. But also the gods sometimes they did the gender changing. We're looking at you, Loki. We're always looking at you, Loki.
We're always looking, yeah.
But also because I've seen it like theorized that they're literally the same person, and that it's that basically Freyja took whichever form was needed to accomplish the task at hand, right? So sometimes she was Freyja, the lady, and sometimes she was Freyr, the dude.
Yeah.
And it was just like a thing that they could do is they could just kind of like be whatever they wanted to be. Seems like a kind of crazy concept, right? You can just be whatever you want to be. I'm looking at you, America, right now. So
and everybody's just like okay with it and accepting the world, right? Right?
So crazy. Only the gods could do something like that.
Man, us mortals could never, right?
Humans got a human, I guess.
Unfortunately so.
Unfortunately.
If you want to hear my spiciness, check out that pub chat.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving along to the sort of last section of worship things for Freyja, and that would be Vernatir, which takes place during Samhain. That's in late October. That's another one that basically lasts for a couple of weeks and up to a month, and that in particular includes Disablot, which honors the Valkyries, of which Freyja is the queen of, as well as the Disir, which are the Fates. And while Freyja is not technically one of the Fates, she does weaving magic and is also able to discern the future. So that definitely falls in line there, as well as Disablot asks for a full and abundant harvest. Again, coming
Obvious
back to Freyja. Now, sometimes Disablot and Vernatir are celebrated in February around the same time as Imbolc. And sometimes it also includes Alphablot, which honors the elves and the Landvictir and the dead. So all of those things kind of fall right in line for Freyja, although she doesn't have a specific
these are all northern hemisphere dates and times, because that's where the people are from.
Yes.
And that's where we're from. So, flip that 180 for the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, and if you are from the Southern Hemisphere, or if you are not, and you want to know more about that, and you need some help figuring out which one goes where when you flip it, let me know. I am more than happy to help out with that. I've actually thought about putting together a calendar that we can offer on our Etsy shop or to our patrons that has all of these things from all of the deep dives that we do as holidays.
So long.
It actually wouldn't be as long as you think.
I think it would be so long. I mean, a lot of them are going to be like, for this week, there are these 15 holidays you can celebrate. Would you like to party?
A lot of them
gods
coincide.
A lot of them do coincide.
But that's definitely a thing. So if you're interested, if you think that would be a cool thing and you'd like to have a calendar of sorts for something like that, let us know.
Yeah, totally.
So that is talking about Freyja.
Yeah,
so
definitely. But before we get into the traditional invocations and spells that we do in these deep dives, I just wanted to touch briefly on satyr magic, or how do you pronounce it?
Satyr magic.
Satyr?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's SEIDR for those of you that are listening and curious.
I have always in my mind heard the word exactly like satyrs, for like satyrs, SATYRS, like satyrs, but with a D instead of a T, right? That's just the way that I say that. So satyr magic is one of those like things that is like very strongly associated with like women, which is like a very strong association with like witchcraft and the whole like prosecuting witches because Christians or whatever. So satyr magic is like weaving magic. It's associated with wands and like weaving tools and things like that. It's about reading weavings, not like, let me stress this, not like, but also not as dissimilar as I would be comfortable with it being from that movie with the curving bullets and whatnot.
The Matrix?
No. The Matrix bullets go straight. The one with Angelina Jolie and Morgan Freeman?
Ooh, boy,
Angelina Jolie. I'm sorry, I said that name insane.
You sure did. Yeah.
Angelina Jolie. I was thinking while I was saying it, so I had to add unnecessary pause. Don't worry about it. It's cool. I'm not crazy. Don't worry. Oh my God, what is that called? Taken? No. Wanted?
No. Keep going.
Oof.
I'll find it.
Anywho, so it's a lot about weaving and like either weaving fate and like manipulating reality into the weaving of the fabrics to make clothing, or reading the weavings to understand the weavings of reality. And it has a lot of connection with like it is wanted.
Yeah,
didn't I say wanted?
You said taken.
I know, but didn't I say wanted second?
I'm gonna go with no, but honestly, I
feel like I'm being lied to right now. I'm being tricked. Yeah, so
like I listen to the things you say.
That's
Jeez.
fair. I don't deserve that. But yeah, so it's like that because they use reading the like loom they worship to assassin stuff or something insane like that.
Yeah, it's very weird.
It's not. Listen, I enjoy the movie. It's not a great movie. It's not the point. It's like that kind of though.
Yeah.
So But so this is really associated primarily with women, and women were the one who practiced it, and it was primarily practiced by women and all this kind of thing, and she was like the patron saint. It is generally said that, based on the things that I've read, that like she is the one who literally showed up and was like, "Hey guys, you know how you're making fabrics?" And everybody was just like, "Yes." Also, glowy. What's going on right now? And she's like, "So this is how you look at that fabric and read the future." And they're like, "Oh, we're not telling the men folk about this."
Yeah.
What, son?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's that. Like, so she's associated with handing that over, but also, and to like further deepen the mystery of Freyja and Frigg and Oder and Odin and just the tapestry of chaos that is Norse mythology that I love so bloody much, is that Odin very specifically uses satyr magic. He very specifically uses like what is generally accepted as a woman's magic. And I'm like, that's just the way that it's talked about. Like men did practice it. Yeah. It's just that like, it was one of those things where it's like, if a dude practiced it, like they didn't talk about it as much or whatever, everything that I've read has sort of talked about it as being like primarily a woman's thing, but like Odin practiced it and got good at it, and it was like part of him becoming more powerful. Like it had direct connection to all of that stuff, which is interesting because if you think about Freyja being Frigg, then basically Odin was just like, "Look how awesome I am, ka-chow," and his wife was like, "Also magic stuff," and he's like, "That could be so much more awesome. Yes, let's do this." Right? Like a partnership in war, right? And how like she's a goddess of war who separates 50% of the people, which is very like the Odinist murder warriors who do the sorting and stuff. Odin gets them, and the like magical warriors who do the like the magical murder stuff, they're going with her. Like it's very it very much lines up with this like tag team approach to war. Those who fought war purely with like the brute might of Odin, and like those who fought war with the like cunning and like manipulation of fate and magic that was like Frigg's or Freyja's, right? Again, depending on whether or not you want to mishmash them or not. Yeah. So there's like a lot to go into there, and I have a lot of pretty chaos headcanon about it, aside from the things that I've read. But like, yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, I just wanted to get like a little brief like about satyr magic because it's very cool. I super dig it, and it's often very like because it has always been talked about like in modern times as being associated with women. A lot of practitioners of like Norse paganism and heathenry and such sort of leave it as that's witchcraft TM, right? Whatever the hell they mean by that, and they just like let it go. But like all of these like manist proud like manly stuff, Odin, whatever, like assholes out there, and I'm just saying this because I want to be mean right now, all of those assholes who are just like, Odin's the best strong man stuff, not gonna do none of that lady shit, like Odin practiced lady magic, guys. Calm way the fuck down about it, alright? So just, I had, like, every time I see that weird dimorphic, like, illogic in the thing, I'm just like, my dude, do you not know about this fucking important part of Odin's power? Like, what is happening to you right now? So, whatever. All right, now we can go into the spells. Also, getting into these spells, I'm just going to interrupt again.
Continue to interrupt.
Second interrupt. Interruption caused soliloquy.
It's like an inception of interrupts.
It's an interception. The ball is mine now. Football reference. Anywho, these spells and invocations are written to us. Written to us. Oh my god. Written by us and have no connection to historical or traditional practices. Like these are our writings and like our choosings, right? And of course they're associated as best we can with like the historical nature of our research, the research that we do, and like my particular practice with regard to Norse paganism, because I am a Norse pagan. So I'm very involved in these, whereas like the Greek ones I'm not as involved in because I have less of a connection in that direction. Sort of. These aren't like, we're not being like, this is how you do this. We're just being like, hey, these are some this is an invocation and this is a spell, like based on the research we've done and like our practice and like whatever that like you can use and modify and do whatever with. I mean, like honestly, most of the time, even when I write spells for myself, I write a spell and go into that shit with a plan, and then halfway through that plan unravels into whatever I'm doing actually. Yeah. So that's the way that I do magic. It's chaos. That's fine. That's fine.
Well, person. Because you have such a huge amount of knowledge and work with the Norse pantheon in particular, we actually had you write these spells. So normally I write them.
Yeah, normally she writes them and I just sort of like touch it to make sure that it like follows some vague amount of logic, as much as I should never be the source of pure logic about anything.
Yeah. So instead, we actually had you write most of these, and I went in and made a few slight changes. Yeah. So because of that, I'm going to have you go ahead and read them.
I feel like that was a trap.
It definitely was a trap, yeah.
Akbar would be proud of you for that trap. But okay, so
we'll start with an invocation for Freyja.
So invocation for Freyja, and this is just also all Norse gods I invocate in like functionally the same way, which is just like a lot of fun pomp and circumstance, right? You know, it's like a crier in like a rich person ball, like a fancy royal ball. So Freyja, ruler of folk Vanir, most glorious of goddesses, I call upon you. Freyja of the golden hair, goddess of beauty, fill my life with love. Freyja, child of the Vanir, daughter of Njord, teach me the secrets of satyr magic. Freyja, queen of the Valkyrie, help me to defend my mind, body, and spirit against those who wish to oppress me. And then provide some sort of like an offering or do a ritual work or meditate as desired, like kind of whatever you are doing that you are planning to invocate Freyja for. And then finish with Freyja, sea brightener, mistress of cats, giver of prosperity, I thank you. Yeah. So, and nice. Yeah, I like to use all their epithets. I like to use all the names because it's fun and it's you know, it shows that you're not just like, hey Jim, why don't you give me some stuff? Like, it shows that you did some research and you're like, Jim, I know you do all these things. But it's very dope.
If that is your preference for your magical practice,
oh yeah, you do not have to do it this way. I just like doing it this way because I think it's fancy.
Yeah, and we like to provide an idea that you can use as inspiration.
It's a stepping off point, certainly. There are also times where I just I write it out for like, you know, especially because blots are often multi-goddal. They got a bunch of gods. I don't know what the way to say that is.
I'm gonna go with multi-goddal.
Yeah, multi-goddal. So, and when we do our rituals, she does. What do you call them? Sabbats?
Yes.
Man, there is something in my brain that prevents me from remembering the word sabbat on a regular basis.
Every time you ask, and every time you say the exact same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. They're blots in my head. So anytime I write for blots, often I will start with all of them, and then I'm just like, that's too many words, and there's a time limit on this, so I'm gonna cut it down and just be like, Odin of this, and Thor of this, and Freyja of this, and Heimdall of this, or whatever. So yeah, it's just, you know, efficiency. But okay, so next up is a spell, and we're doing a satyr magic spell, and this is one of those things where, because of my like practice following with regard to like my own reconstructed Odinism, because a lot of Odinism and heathenry in this country is real supremacist-y, and I hate that with a passion that consumes my soul. So I do it my way and ignore the haters. Or tell them they're wrong. It's mostly telling them they're wrong.
And we
I talk
talk
a lot.
more about the ways that you do what you do.
Yeah.
And in the modern Odinism and heathenry episode,
we go into
as
it
well
there.
as we talk about ways to sort of tell if something is crossing that line of morality, essentially, in our toxic internet witchcraft episode. So if you're interested in hearing more about those,
there is a lot of
check
that
those
out
episodes
there.
out.
Oof. Anywho, so this is a satyr magic spell, and you're just going to need a few things for this. You're going to need some piece of cloth or fabric to meditate over. Something that has visible texture works the best. So like a canvas, or like, honestly, like if you have a pair of jeans, denim has a fantastic weave to it. Yeah. Something that has like visible weave. A lot of our like modern plasticky fabrics, the weave is so tight that it's like, it's very smooth. Yeah. Although you can't do that. It still has a weave, like unless it's literally a piece of plastic that's flat and smooth. Yeah. It has weave
like
to
linen,
it.
I think would also be a
is
good
fantastic.
Choice.
Cotton is a good choice. Anything that you can see the weave, I mean, honestly, like that, like really nice silk, right? Like that. Oh, like you can see the weave in that. So anything that you can see the weaving, because the idea is that you're trying to meditate on the weaving itself, right? On the connections that form from weaving, because this is weaving magic, satyr magic. And then you're also going to want like a snack that's large enough of a snack that you can both have a snack, because doing magic is exhausting and it drains you. So prepare a snack so you're ready for when you come out of that spell, or you're done with your practice and you're hungry or whatever. But also so you can leave an offering, because leaving an offering is nice, and we should be nice to these people. They're helping us with things.
Yes.
Well, that seems pretty logically straightforward in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to hold this cloth in your hands and really focus or meditate on the weaving. I mean, unask the question with regard to the focusing and the meditating, right? Try to open your mind to the possibilities of the construction and of the weave, and how that connects to the weaving of the fabrics of reality with regard to however you perceive reality, whether or not it's a series of vibrations or a series of sounds, or a weaving of like literal strings of like the cosmic string theory, or like loop quantum gravity, or like whatever you want to do. So like the weavings and how it connects, meditate on that, and then meditate on like the future you're wishing to divine. So like basically the question you're trying to ask, but again, this isn't saying like don't buy the red car. This is allowing you to divine the future, right? So look into the future you're trying to divine, or that you're trying to shape, because weaving magic also implies that one can weave a future they wish to achieve, as it were. And then when you're ready, you're gonna basically call upon the satyr magic and Freyja by saying this little bit that I wrote here. Freyja, Queen of the Valkyrie, Lady of the Slain, teach me to read the weavings of fate and influence what is to come. Right? And then you're going to continue to meditate on the cloth after asking Freyja for help in this. And meditate and focus on the cloth basically for as long as you wish with regard to trying to achieve your spell, whether it's a long meditation or a short form meditation. Meditate on the cloth, and then after you've completed your work, silently thank Freyja for helping, or out loud. Again, I do a lot of silent stuff, so silently thank Freyja or say it out loud for helping you and guiding you, and then leave a portion of your snack on the cloth, the piece of cloth that you just focused on, that you just meditated on, for that satyr magic. Leave your offering for her on that, in the traditional place that you leave offerings, out of the way reach of children's and pets. And if you are going to leave it outside, make sure it's not toxic to wild animals, just in case wild animals get to it, and all of those things. Yep. If you have like a planter box and it's like an organic piece of fabric and like nice food that's not going to rot and be bad, you can bury it, or however you like to handle your offerings. We have like little offering spaces up on our altars, so like we don't really have to think about that as much as some people, but I know that for a lot of people, especially like city folk,
And
folk,
people who are in the
and
closet.
people who are in the closet have to be a bit more precautious about that. So you
do
can
whatever
always
you
do
think
that.
works for you and resonates with you within the level of feeling safe.
Yeah.
In your own practice.
Yes,
as
totally. If you're super in the closet about it, let me tell you what, a lot of cloth tea bags have very obvious
weaving
weaves.
patterns.
So you can focus on the tea bag in its weaving and then steep it in water and then leave that coffee cup or teacup, leave that teacup with its tea bag as the offering after you've had a sip for your snack.
Yeah.
And then you're just a forgetful person who left a cup of tea around and not doing magic and stuff.
You could also use
Get away with magic, guys.
Yeah, you could also use a cloth napkin or placemat.
Oh, totally.
As a great way. You don't necessarily have to place the food item directly on the cloth. You can put it on a plate that's also on top of a cloth.
Totally.
So you can, so there's a ton of different
There's
ways.
So many ways that if you need to like be on the DL about it, you can totally do that. Like you don't need to be like pomp and circumstance. I understand that we live in a place where that is not always easy to do, and a time that's not always easy to do. So we get that.
Yeah, totally. So moving on to the list reading section.
Everybody's favorite part.
Time for correspondences. So animals associated with Freyja are boar, cat, falcon, also horses and pigs and rabbits. Colors would be gold, green, and red. Stones, amber, very particularly, carnelian, copper, emerald, moonstone, and rose quartz are all associated with her. For plants, alder, chamomile, daisy, mugwort, rose, and yarrow are associated with her. For foods, apples, chocolate, mead, pork, again because of her association with the boar, and strawberries as well. And deities similar to her that you can look into are Aphrodite or / Venus, Demeter, Persephone, Inanna, and Ishtar. Isis also have some very similar connotations, which we've talked about in earlier sections of this podcast. And then other miscellaneous things would be chariot, any sort of jewelry, the moon, perfume are all things that would be associated with Freyja.
Yeah. And then obviously fabrics.
Yes.
In fabric wear, because again, satyr magic.
Yeah.
So that was but a wee taste of the list of correspondences, what with takes up so much space. So if you are interested in the full list of correspondences, as well as a Book of Shadows page for this podcast episode, those are available on our Patreon.
Yep.
Speaking of our patrons, we would like to give a shout out to them. Alan, Miranda, Alexa, Helena, and Adrian. You guys are awesome. You keep us going. You're all the best. Looking to improve these every time, and you are the ones that help us do that.
And we very much appreciate it.
Yes, I know that how far behind I am with regard to Book of Shadows pages. They take a lot of work, and I'm working more 12-hour shifts than I care to talk about. So.
It's been a rough couple of months for us.
I'm busy.
Yeah.
But I am working on them. I am moving forward with them. It's just slow going when I have to do it very, very late at night.
Yeah.
And also still sleep because I'm not past the sleeping stage of my existence yet. Soon, I promise. Soon, no more sleep. So anywho, our next episodes are next up is our pub chat, which will come out next week. And that's pub chat episode number 11. Guys, we're getting along with these pub chats.
Yeah, we
so
are.
if you have pub chat based questions you would like us to answer, submit those in all of the things. It's everywhere, all the time, everywhere. You can find us. And or also you can like comment below or anything like that, as well as you can come around if you just listen to like the main stuff and you don't listen to the pub chats. The pub chats are like a user question, still that word
again. Like a listener question.
Oh my god, I don't know why I was just like customer. What word am I using here? My brain is melting, guys. A listener question, as well as a brief story time where we talk about like kind of just like fun brief stories within like magic and,
whatever like weird stuff I came across that
whatever.
Doesn't fit into like a full podcast.
You're like, this would be
episode.
dope, but this isn't enough to do a podcast, but it's enough to tell a story. So we have a story time in the middle of our pub chats, and then we also have Magic in Media, which is where we talk about media that we recently watched that has magic in it. It's a very straightforward naming structure we've got going on here. And that's really fun. We will be starting to do full-length Magic in Media episodes on our YouTube channel. Again, I don't know when. It's just when we have the time is just the nightmare on that one. But we are planning on doing those, so stay tuned for those. And if you have a particular show or movie or anime or whatever, even a book that you read that has magic in it that you like would be interested to hear us talk about, let us know. We are always looking for new shows. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, our Netflix list is like a bajillion miles
and
long.
we already have some requests.
Yeah, and we do already have some requests. So
get your request in sooner than later.
Oh my god, yeah. Because it's gonna take a while. So we got to get going on these.
We basically have a never-ending idea, like stream of
concepts and
ideas.
ideas.
Yeah,
it's fun. And then after that is episode 43 of the podcast, which is
Lunasa
102. I read that and was like, Lofnasad?
That is a way that you can say that, yes.
Okay. I'm pretty certain I might say it Lofnasad, because I was just like, I'm pretty certain it's not Lofnasad, or at least I think I saw you read that word earlier and not say Lofnasad, because that's definitely Lofnasad to me.
There are regional variants in how you pronounce that word.
Cool gangster. Well,
yeah.
And that's one of the...
That's one of the festivals. It's one of the Sabbats.
Yeah, Sabbats, that's the word.
Yep.
That's one of those. So that should be exciting. And the 102s are a little bit different, a little bit more of a deep dive. We hit like very specific things about those. So, I mean, you listen to our podcast, you know what's going on there.
And if you don't, listen to some more episodes.
Yeah, listen to some of the 102s for like more like details about those particular blots.
Yeah, and if you want to sort of preload yourself with some generalities about Lunasa before we get to that episode, definitely listen to Lunasa episode 101.
Yeah.
It's actually not episode 101, sorry. Listen to Lunasa 101.
Episode, we don't have that number on the screen right now. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to click around a bunch because we're about ready to end. So either way, I have been John Norgrove. I might have missed the naming thing at the beginning of this. This has been Julie Norgrove. This is the Horn
and Cauldron podcast.
And we will catch you guys next time. Stay magical, folks.
Yeah, and don't forget, breathe in self-confidence and breathe out self-doubt.